We're live.
Well, hello and welcome to the Waking Up Spiritually podcast. Gregg, Kirk, my co-host, and I are so thrilled to have you here. I'm Wendy Rose Williams. I am a past life energy healer, and I have the gift and the privilege of helping people release energy that does not serve them anymore. Often that past life energy can show up as stuck energy. It can show up as chronic pain, both physical and emotional, anxiety and depression. We're just feeling like we cannot move forward. As I said, that darn stuck energy. So my website is wendyrosewilliams.com. It's my full name, and you're so welcome to sign up for a free 1-hour group Zoom energy healing for me there with Q&A. And Waking Up Spiritually, Gregg, we've been doing this now for well over 3 years. Always so much fun to get to podcast with you and with our wonderful listeners. And everything is archived at wakingupspiritually.com. So you're so welcome to jump into that and look for any topics of interest to you there. And anything you need that you're not finding in that search button, just let us know because we'd love to create a program for you.
Yes. I am Gregg Kirk. I'm Wendy's co-host. You can come to my website at greggkirk.com. That's spelled GREGGKIRK.com. I do energy work, remote and in-person sessions using tuning forks and versions of Reiki. I'm a Lyme disease advocate, and I just spoke at a Lyme disease conference last weekend, the Lyme Bites Symposium, and I did a presentation on using Reiki and energy healing as an adjunct therapy to Lyme treatment. So we're moving away from just strictly pharmaceutical treatments to herbal treatments, and I'm trying to push the envelope on people considering energy healing, especially for patients who are stuck in their treatments. Very, very helpful for people who have experienced trauma and cyclical issues, whether it be emotional issues or energetic issues. So that presentation you can check out. You can go to the Lyme Bites website. That's spelled LYMEBYTES, and look for my presentation there. So I did 5 case studies, just scientifically as I could. So check that out.
That's fantastic. And I know things like Reiki and other energy healing has been acknowledged and used in some hospitals, particularly with cancer patients and cardiac patients. So that makes perfect sense, Gregg. And that's really exciting that it's just being seen as an adjunct, because yes, that whole mind, body, spirit. And as you said, when it's something that's so cyclical and so devastating as Lyme disease, that's just a really big deal. So very cool.
Yeah, thank you. Well, Wendy, we're doing another fun one today. We're doing the third in our installment of Myth Breakers episodes, and these, I know, they're my favorite ones that we've done in a long time. I mean, we've had some great guests, which I consider like a whole other thing. But in terms of just raw presentations that we've done, podcasts, the Myth Breakers ones are some of my favorites. So this is our third installment. Let me pull that up right now. We'll share a screen so you can see.
And as I mentioned, we do have the website. We also have the YouTube channel. And you're so welcome to join us in our Facebook group, which is called Waking Up Spiritually. And that's where you can see us podcast live or tune in via your favorite podcast app. So, and it is a visual PowerPoint. So you're welcome to just listen, of course. But also we're able to see the PowerPoint if you want to call it up that way. So Gregg, I'm going to be listening, but I just need to go off camera for 1 second here and just do a little door opening for the barky dog. So I will be right back.
No worries. Okay, we're gonna. All right. Well, let me do the energy clearing and blessing today, and unless
that would be wonderful.
Okay. Wendy's done it in the past. I really enjoy her bringing the nets of clearing. Angels bringing the nets of clearing. I do. I'll show you what I do. Instead of trying to describe it, I'll show you what I do.
Please.
So we are invoking Archangel Michael, Raphael, Saint Germain, all the guides, guardian angels, healing entities, and non-physical beings who have all of our best interest in mind to provide healing, guidance, and protection for this presentation today. We are all sovereign beings practicing free will. We do not give permission for anything or anyone to enter our fields, our bodies, our consciousness, our sovereignty, or our lifetimes in any way throughout all time, space, and dimensions, including the here and now. We do not allow the mingling of our energies during this presentation. And thank you, all the guides, guardian angels, and healing entities.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, topic number one, and these are topics you probably heard before, and basically what Wendy and I do. If you haven't seen a Mythbusters, or I'm sorry, not Mythbusters, totally different show. If you haven't seen one of our Myth Breakers episodes, we take a kind of a well-worn topic, or a topic or a phrase that has been deemed as truth or old fact, and we kind of analyze it and turn inside out and upside down and see what we think about it. So the first one here is, in order to spiritually advance, it is important to kill your ego. I know this is in some of the Buddhist beliefs. I've heard this. Killing your ego is an important thing to do. And Wendy, what's your take on this at this point?
Well, my first thought on that would be, if we're coming from the perspective of our ego running our lives, I can see why you would want to
Right.
get that extreme with it, because we've all been taunted and just really brought to our knees by our ego at times. But let's talk about what the ego is.
Yes, let's back up here. Yeah. So let's get some terminology going. So the ego, and this is just my analysis, but the ego is can also be called the shadow self, or the small self, the separate self, or the monkey mind. I believe all these refer to more or less the same thing, which is the voice in your head that keeps you up at night thinking about uncomfortable things that makes you not sleep. I think Michael Singer, in his book The Surrender Experiment, had a perfect analogy of it as he realized what this ego was. He was meditating, and there was a part of him that was just trying to meditate, but then there was another part of him that was bugging him, getting him to think about things that he didn't want to think about, unresolved issues with friends from 20 years ago, ridiculous things he should have done, regrets that he had, all this stuff. And he realized that ultimately he was the conscious mind watching this happen. So it was a pivotal moment in the book where he realized that his true self is the conscious mind witnessing this nonsense. So it was shortly after that he thought, I want to kill this part of me that is annoying the hell out of me and keeping me up at night. Is that
that makes sense, because that coulda, woulda, shoulda energy, it's just thinking, it's not helpful.
Right.
So being able to release from that. And I just have a really direct take on what the ego is. I think of the ego as an important part of our human psyche, and that we can't eradicate it. And its job is to keep us alive.
Right.
And the ego can just over interpret that as no change. So when we are trying something new, that's why that anxiety, that fear, that's why that voice can come in. For instance, if someone has a really successful energy healing session, the number one way the ego can try, because it can get scared because it's such a profound breakthrough, and the way it can try and roll backwards is back to that, that stasis place, is to go, you're making stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
So when you hear that voice that is not kind, it's taunting, it can really be torturing you, that is very likely your ego, and your ego in not a good mood.
Yeah, exactly.
Not a good day.
Right.
So I just work to talk gently to it and just try and peel the onion. Why are you scared? What's going on? Why are you throwing down flags? Why are you being mean? Why are you angry? Because really it's getting down to like a disempowerment type of thing, very, very often. And it's us not being integrated in our energy, because again, the ego is part of us. So my goal is to balance my ego. And if you want to take it as far as saying I've killed the ego, I don't love that expression, but I can understand why that can be part of a spiritual belief system, meaning you're not having the negative impact from it anymore. I guess you could take it to that expression.
Right. I look at it as the ego is like your emotional or spiritual immune system. So in other words, it's kind of like what you were saying. It's basics are there to keep you alive. It's what's there to keep you from jumping off a cliff or driving your car into an embankment. But as you noticed, it gets out of control, very quickly in our early life, and it starts creating reasons for it to be around. And you brought up a really interesting point. When you do an energy session or something like that, which pulls you away from and out of your ego, your ego may react in a self-defense kind of way and
Right.
feed, wait a minute, you're trying to get rid of me. Stop it. You need me, kind of thing is what it'll do. And it'll throw lies at you like, yeah, that energy session didn't work. What are you doing this nonsense for? It's all woo woo. It's not real. And all of that kind of,
You're not capable of it. You're not good enough. It's
yeah,
that whole you're not enough
yeah,
uh, type of energy, because it's engendering fear and anxiety and this like control illusion. And
yes,
I also see the ego as being rather underemployed nowadays, because there's not a lot of saber-toothed tigers running around
right,
that, snap us up.
right,
So we make up a lot of stuff to scare ourselves with and torture ourselves with. But if you really clear energy, ground, take a couple deep breaths and look at the present moment, is any of that going on?
right.
Pretty unlikely. It's you borrowing trouble, as my grandfather would say.
Oh yeah,
We're creating anxiety and worrying about something that's unlikely to ever happen, and we're actually starting to create it because we're putting energy into it, and that's the law of attraction.
right.
So that's where ego can become a runaway beast.
Yes.
We're creating what we don't want.
That's what Esther Hicks says. Don't use your imagination to create something you don't want or attract something you don't want.
Right.
That's what you're
Right.
doing when you let your ego do what it wants. So I agree with you, Wendy. I believe the ego is a part of you, and so does Michael Singer. Michael Singer tried to kill his ego, and he realized, hey, this is a part of me. This is like trying to kill my appendix or something. This is
That's a great way to put it, because that's just silly.
right, right, right. So he decided to make friends with it, and that's how. Just in general, with anything in life, I've come to notice that when you attack something with force, you're going to get the opposite force, equal and opposite reaction, right? If you attack something with love and kindness and softness, you're going to get that back, and it's going to dissolve your ego. There's actually a really good book just that I read in college. It was written by a woman named Ursula K. Le Guin. She's a Canadian author who wrote the Earth-Sea trilogy. And in the first book, there's this fascinating story. This predated Harry Potter, by the way. So it's about a young man who starts to have magical powers, and they live in a world where they're like, oh, if you start to have magical powers, we need to send you to wizard school. So he goes off, and he's getting ready to go to wizard school, but he gets in a magic competition with a friend of his. So he's doing magic for the wrong reasons, ego reasons, right? And then when this happens, it unleashes what he thinks is a demon. It's this black shadow version of, he doesn't know what it is. And this thing chases him all over the world and almost kills him. And he's amazed at how it knows everything that he knows. It's kind of like if you know the Spider-Man Venom situation, where it's like the shadow side of Spider-Man. It has all of his powers and knows everything he knows and fights the way he fights. It's the most formidable opponent of you. And then finally, at the end of the book, I'm sorry if I'm giving away the ending, it's still worth reading. He decides to give this thing love. He embraces it. It goes back inside of him. It reintegrates, as you were saying, and he becomes a better version of himself because he was able to give love to his shadow self. It was literally his shadow self. His ego. It's a fantastic book. I highly recommend it. It's the best example I've ever heard of exactly what we're talking about. Instead of killing, and he tried, but the thing, it was too smart, too strong, and instead he gave it love, and it integrated it back into his own energy, and he was better for it. So
absolutely. And if you are noticing that sort of impact going on in that sort of voice, and you're having that sort of experience, because we all absolutely do from time to time, just when I sit down and talk with it, I always notice the ego. It's primitive. It's younger. It's just a younger. It's typically a child, a teenager. It's seldom even early 20s. So I just like you said, just try and be very kind and empathetic, but I do not let it run the show, because it's that expression of the mind is a wonderful servant, and I think you could substitute the word ego there, but a terrible master. I'm certainly not going to let that run the show, or we're certainly not going to be our higher selves. We're not living the life we're intended to.
Right. And it usually uses fear-based tactics on you.
That's a big clue when you're
justify its existence. Yeah. So if you're having these anxiety attacks, or always playing in the back of your mind. I mean, here's a great quote by Gabrielle Bernstein. She says, "Whenever you're afraid, it's proof that you've turned your back on love and chosen to have faith in the ego." So it's like you're listening to the ego then. So like you, Wendy,
you nailed it right there with that quote. Nailed it.
Right. I've talked to it too, so there was just last week, I was having this anxiety and fear that came out of a particular situation that had been going on in my life. So I just stopped myself. I happened to be in the middle of my meditative practice. I was doing a little bit of yoga, and all of a sudden I stopped. I'm like, why is this happening now? So then I just talked to it and said, listen, I know why you're here. You're here because you're trying to protect this body. I'm in this body too. So we need to do what's best for this body. So back off. This is not helpful. You're making this body upset. It doesn't rest well. It doesn't digest food well when there's all this anxiety. So just back off. And I don't know, it worked like magic for me. So I recommend having conversations with your ego if that is needed. And because I think trying to kill it you're going to end up like the guy in the Earthsea trilogy, going all over the world in these pitched battles of
chasing shadows.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe that's why Peter Pan had to have Wendy stitch his shadow back onto himself. He'd rejected the part of himself he didn't like, because let's get real, Peter Pan had some real issues.
Oh my God. Yeah. Didn't want to grow up.
That's what that shadow was, and why.
Oh my God. I forgot about that part. That is a great example. All right. So, our conclusion on this, Wendy, is I think we both agree.
We need to balance the ego.
Yeah.
We can't eradicate it, nor would we want to. It's here to keep us alive.
Right. Agreed. All right. Our next one. If you can't love someone, you can't love someone else until you've learn to love yourself. I hear this all the time. So the idea is you start loving yourself first, and only then will you be able to love somebody properly. I hear this all the time, especially in romantic relationships that go bad, where somebody says, well, the reason that person was such a lousy partner was that person didn't love him or herself. You got to love yourself first before you can be a good partner. So what do you
This is
think?
an interesting one. I see this as like two sets of stairs. And as you love yourself more, you attract people of a higher caliber into your life that are going to match you there.
Mm,
And then as you're loving them, they're loving themselves and they're like moving up and you're moving up.
yeah.
Yet you can be going the other direction too. But I choose to see us
Yeah,
rise in
I like
love
that.
versus falling in love,
Yeah.
because I do think there is a lot of falling in love, which is it's very romanticized, that you're giving up everything and you're giving up your power and your control and you're giving your heart away. Now, why would I want to give my heart away? Be growing the love in my heart, both for myself and for others, and choosing who I'm going to share that with, in a
Right.
very open-hearted way. But I don't want to give my heart away, and I don't want to get into a romantic relationship where I lose all common sense, and then you start missing the fact that it's not healthy, it's not good for you, it's a codependent type of
Right.
relationship, even toxic relationship.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting one. What are your thoughts on it, Greg?
Well, um, I'm reading a book. It's about the law of one. It, I'll just plug the book real quickly. It's a fascinating book that was actually, it came up in one of Edgar Casey's readings. This book was predicted by Edgar Casey back when I don't remember the dates that he was doing his trance readings, but it
I
was
believe
about,
it was 1930s, 1940s, I believe.
yeah, I was going to say it was all 90 or so years ago. He, now granted, Edgar Casey was in a trance and not awake when he would start reading the Akashic records, but he mentioned this book called The Children of the Law of One a couple of times, and he mentioned the author John Peniel. So, and he said that it would come out in 1998, and it did.
Wow. So
Yeah,
like 50 years before.
yeah.
That's why he's considered the greatest sleeping prophet.
He's like 90% accurate. He had 90% accuracy. So, I just came across this a couple months ago, and I thought, well, that's got my attention, right? So, in this book, the idea of focusing on loving yourself before learning to love others is practicing the idea of separate self-consciousness. So the idea of the law of one is we are all of the same, we're all threads in the same cloth. So the idea of unselfish love, loving unconditionally, is the goal. So this romantic love is one of the most selfish kinds of love. They go into a lot of detail about it, where they basically say you depend on somebody else for your happiness, and that's a bankrupt proposition right there. You know,
Right,
it's
right,
too much for somebody to take on anyway.
right,
Um, so the idea that we are separate from one another energetically drives a division between us and the others in the universe. And so learning to practice unselfish love is the main goal and the main point of the golden rule, which is love your neighbor as yourself. So my point is, why not follow the golden rule? Who should you love first, you or yourself? Well, love your neighbor as if it were yourself. So that puts it all together. It comes full circle. Follow the golden rule, and I think you'll be okay. So learning to love others can help us learn to love ourselves more thoroughly. I mean, I think the two stairway thing that you were talking about, Wendy, is absolutely true. I think it doesn't matter which one you do first. I don't think they're mutually exclusive is the point. I don't believe that you can't learn to love somebody else until you learn to love yourself. I think you could actually, when you learn to love somebody else, it can help you love yourself. Help
Yeah.
you learn to love
And
yourself.
it's
Yeah.
just a matter of degrees too,
Yeah.
Greg, because the people who care about us the most, whether it's a romantic love relationship or friend or family, they just remind us and find things about us lovable when we're in those hard places where the ego's not being very nice
Right.
and we're just not finding ourselves lovable. I mean, that's what true friends and lovers are for, is to continue to find us lovable and like hold up that vision of us until we find ourselves again, just
Right.
like we do that for them. That's why often like hearing your best friend's voice in your head, that can be very helpful versus if you have a lot of negative self-talk or if the ego is trying to run the show too often, to just stop. What would my best friend say right now? You know,
Mhm.
if I'm really down on myself or criticizing myself or being a perfectionist or overwhelmed or whatever it might be, it's like, what would my best friend be saying right now? And
Mhm.
I think that's that loving voice then can, bubble up within us again.
Right. But whatever we do, learning to love somebody else as if it were you, and really trying to love unselfishly. That's the main point they make in the book, in the Children of the Law of One, is that they're saying not too many people do that, and they gave some really funny examples of what it's like. They're like, well, the examples they gave, they said, at Christmas time, some people, when a parent gives a gift to the child and says it's from Santa and it's not them, like that's an example of unselfish love. You're not taking credit. You're giving love, and you don't need credit for it. That's an example of unselfishness. I thought that's what a funny way of an example, but it's true. It's with anything. If you I because I've seen this in romantic relationships quite a lot, that somebody will say, oh, my partner, I made dinner 4 nights this week, and my partner didn't even say anything about it. Well, that's not unselfish love. Are you doing this for some sort of emotional payback? Or if you're unselfish, you're just making dinner because it's a joy to make for your partner. End of story. It's
You
you don't
probably
need,
need to eat too.
right, you don't need anything back from that.
Yeah, yeah.
And one of my favorite
Versus
scenes,
scorekeeping.
right, one of my favorite scenes in the movie, uh Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, with Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn and Sidney Poitier. It's about an interracial, so this is back in the 60s, so it was a hot topic, interracial. A white young girl is dating a African American man, and they're coming to dinner to I think they lived in Connecticut, which is where I live, which is amusing to me now. So anyway,
New England,
you're right.
Puritan, yeah.
But Sidney Poitier's parents also come, so the African American mother and father come, and so they all have dinner together. And at one point, they're really digging into the discussion about why this is right and wrong. And it's funny how both of the fathers are against this idea, and both of the mothers are fine with it. So Sidney Poitier's father takes him out on the porch and he said, I paid for your college. I did all this stuff for you, and this is how you repay me. And and in my mind, I'm like, well, huh, in my old world thinking, I'm like, he does have a point. Sidney Poitier came back with a retort that I'll never forget. And he's right. He said, you did those things not because I was supposed to pay you back. That was your job as a father. That's what you do as a father. You pay for college for your son. You raise me because you love me. That's what you're supposed to do. I'm not supposed to pay you back for that. I'm going to do that to my son and I'm not going to ask him to pay me back because that's what a loving father does. And I thought, wow, that is what unselfish love looks like. And I didn't know it. It doesn't ever need a payback. So I'm never forgot that scene. And now I was able.
That is really powerful. And you're right, Greg. Many people don't experience unconditional love often enough, if
Right.
ever. And that's why we really need to learn how to give it to ourselves
Yeah.
and then just radiating it out to others. And it's why I love connecting people with their guides in session, because many people are not yet really connected with their guide and they want to. And that's a big hallmark of it, is not only the wisdom, but just feeling that support and that unconditional love, like a father, like, or a mother, an
Right.
unconditional loving relationship, from that parent.
Right. Well, Wendy.
It's not giving with a big old string on it or a price tag,
Right.
manipulation or control, which is what you're starting to describe, of you then therefore must date so and so and give me X grandbabies.
Right. Yes, exactly. Which you see in a lot of cultures, all through all different kinds of cultures. So Wendy, let's conclude this one. Where did we come out on this? Is it true that you can't really love someone until you love yourself, or?
Well, I think you can be in a place where you really need to be doing your own work, and it may be hard to be focusing on family or friends, let alone a romantic relationship. But I do think we're infinitely loving beings. So I think that by loving others, and a lot of people, that's why they love their pets and animals so well, because you're getting that unconditional, love coming back again from them. So I'm still in the place where I feel like it's two staircases, and it's just we should be, rising together.
Right. I think we both agree it's not a prerequisite. Like you can
Correct.
still learn to love somebody else even before you love yourself. In fact, it might even help you learn to love yourself.
Exactly, because it's just you're going to continue to rise in love through those loving, healthy relationships with yourself and with others.
Agreed. Okay. Here's a good one. We've all heard this. Money is the root of all evil. Okay. In fact, Pink Floyd wrote a song about it in 1973. Money, so they say, is the root of all evil today. In that famous song in 7/8 time, I believe. So it's an unusual song. I just watched a documentary about the making of that, the Dark Side of the Moon. So that song's in 7/8 time. It's not a traditional rock four beat. And yeah, so money, the root of all evil. Huh. Here's my quick belief, and then I want to hear what you have to say, Wendy. Is I believe that money, like any other object in the 3D world, is a tool, and is capable of being good, used for good or evil. So it's totally dependent on the hands of whose hands it's in. I mean, you see, you donate to churches, you give money. If money's so evil, why are we donating to a church who, are supposedly doing great things, right? They're doing charitable things, helping, feeding the poor, the sick, whatever. And money is involved in that. So how is that evil? It kind of falls apart for me there.
Yeah, I see it the same way as you, Greg, that money is a tool to be used wisely. It's just that straightforward to me. But my goodness, it's one of the most loaded topics and things that I'm working to help unweave for clients the most often,
Mhm.
because of the societal conditioning and parental conditioning, or whichever other well-meaning impacts come into account when we're under 8 years of age, in particular, because we don't have a filter yet, and everything comes in very literally. And I was shocked in one of my own past life regression sessions when I was the client. We went back to where I was getting tripped up, and it was from when I was a child. And my grandfather used to say, and it was a joke, but I didn't know it was a joke because I was a little kid. And he used to refer to money as, oh, that filthy lucre. So I thought, ooh, filthy, ooh, oh, word I don't know, ooh. So it just was, it created this repel
Yeah.
uh, type of energy for me, very similar to money is the root of all evil.
Mhm.
And often people may have taken vows of poverty in past lifetimes where it was very appropriate because they're entering a monastery, they're going to be an oracle, they're going under someone's um, patronage. But guess what? They're going to have their housing, their food, their clothing, their warmth, their utility bill, their transportation. They're going to have everything taken care of for them.
Right.
But because the soul memory is eternal, they're just remembering, oh, I took a vow of poverty. I'm doing something bad. I'm doing something wrong. And there can be this spiritual disdain for money that it's not holy, blessed are the poor.
Mhm.
So think of all those energies and just conditioning that's been just, jammed in on us for thousands and thousands of years.
We
So
did.
again, I want to be in the place where money is a tool to be used wisely. And it's an area where I've had to do a lot of personal work. So I attract a lot of clients in that arena because I am meant to do philanthropy, and I know what those projects are, and I can't do philanthropy in a capitalistic society with no money. So
Right.
again, it's a tool to be used wisely.
Right. Well, as an energy worker, healer, Wendy, I wonder if you went through the same experience as I did in the beginning of whether or not to even charge somebody. Because when I first learned Reiki, I heard different people say to me, listen, Reiki is a gift. Not everybody can do it well. And you can learn it, but some people, whatever. It's that whole thing we talked about in our first Myth Breakers episodes. People have intuitive or psychic abilities. Yes, you're born with the ability. Some people learn how to swim, and some people compete in the Olympics. So
Right,
there's a whole
right.
spectrum of how good you can get at it. So, point is, I got a good enough at it that I felt I could take on clients. And then I heard some people say, because it's a God-given gift, you should not charge anybody. So I didn't in the beginning,
Mhm.
and because I thought it was a sacred thing.
Yeah.
I didn't for a while, actually. I was just doing it with family and friends and referrals.
Mhm.
I'll tell you something.
How did you feel
I felt
over time?
okay. Sometimes it got a little overwhelming, but I noticed, and then somebody told me that you need to have an energetic exchange.
Mhm.
A patient needs to be invested in their own healing for it to be more
Right.
effective. Now, when I heard that, I thought that makes a lot of sense to me. And when I started charging money, the sessions got way better. The patients were more participatory, they were involved.
Aged.
The outcomes were dramatic. Some of them were miraculous. I didn't have any miracles when I wasn't charging. I'll just be honest with you. And some of the more miraculous ones, I use them as case studies in my Line Bites presentation. So they're documented, sometimes with medical doctors corroborating with CAT scans and so forth. Some things that disappeared. So those were paid sessions. So there was an exchange of money. We call it an energy exchange, where the patient and practitioner are involved in the healing together equally. They meet each other in the middle. I think that's so. With that in mind, how is money is just part of an energy exchange to me in that situation. So I don't put any connotation of whether it's evil or not. It's an investment that the patient uses to meet me in the middle.
Right.
So just one last thing I want to say about it. I'm going to quote this book again because this falls perfectly into this is like a volleyball spike. It just got set up. But I want to spike it. So they're saying that selfishness is the root of all problems and evils that exist on earth. Political parties, greed, war, money, lust, vanity, and carelessness are all branches of the same tree. Separate self-consciousness, thinking that you are separate from the universe and thus all things in existence. This is the root of all evil. Being selfishness, ultimately. So yeah. So again, money is a tool of selfishness, right? But you can be selfish in a lot of other ways, and just cutting yourself off from others and being a jerk and not helping anyone and only, staying to yourself. And, somebody falls down in the street, you walk by them. That's some evil stuff to me. So, I think money's in the conversation of being a part of, it can be a part of evil, but it's not, definitely not the root in my mind.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Well, we're
Wonderful.
thumbs up on both of those. All right, Wendy.
I'm waiting to have one that we really disagree on, Greg. I'm waiting for the throwdown. We haven't had it yet.
You brought up some topics for our next one. I think we might have one.
Yeah, fair enough. I know we can have a respectful debate and we'll both learn from it.
Absolutely.
Please join us December 11th for the next Waking Up Spiritually podcast. And I'm thrilled. We're going to have Debbie Buse is going to join us again, as she did last year. And she is a wonderful sidereal astrologer and numerologist, such a knowledgeable person, and just lovely, lovely, upbeat energy, and just so in service. And she's going to help us look forward to 2024. And it really takes a skilled astrologer and numerologist to be able to take all that data, because anybody can tell you, oh, this planet's going to be here and this is going to be here, but you need someone to help you understand what might that mean. So that's why I really see it as a forecast. So, and we got such great feedback on her helping us in her presentation last year. So this year we've got her coming right in December, so we can have the whole year to look forward to with the information she's going to share. And please join us on Facebook. Put into the search bar and the search groups for Waking Up Spiritually. And you can join us there and get support and ask questions and share what's on your mind. And visit our website at wakingupspiritually.com. And you can click on the broadcast tab. And Gregg does a beautiful job of doing a summary of each of the podcasts, as well as there is that search button, as I mentioned. So if you need help with energy management, with past lives, with connecting with your guide, with dreams, whatever it might be, just put that topic in, and you're very likely to find a podcast or two or three on that topic, since there's 55 or so of them there. And if you don't find it, please let us know, because it's certainly something we'll take under consideration. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and the link is here. Please rate and review us on Apple iTunes or whatever your favorite podcast app is, because that helps other people find us. Visit Gregg at his website, which is Gregg, Kirk, KIRK.com, and see all the cool things that he's got going on, including fire circles and the energy healings that he does. And visit me at wendyrosewilliams.com. And as I mentioned, you're so welcome to join me for that ongoing series I do of 1 hour energy healings with Q&A. And those are a lot of fun. I've been getting great feedback on those. And I also then review with people what the other services are that I offer, including the series of 3 energy healings, which are 2.5 hours, 1 hour, and 1 hour, as well as the Keep the Momentum Going program. So thank you. Thank you for being here, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.